My ceremony doesn't need a burden. Know your place. My son shouted and pushed me out. But what happened minutes later broke him. I arrived at the venue with the small velvet box pressed carefully between my palms. The way you hold something that is both fragile and sacred. At 72, my hands shake more than they used to. But that morning they trembled for a different reason. It was my son's wedding day, and despite all the distance that had grown between us, a part of me still believed a mother should witness her child step into a new life. I had rehearsed a quiet greeting, something soft and loving, in case he looked my way. I never got to use it. As soon as I stepped inside the hall in Oklahoma, surrounded by white lights and polished wood floors that smelled faintly of lemon oil, I saw Elsa walking toward me. She looked so radiant in her simple gown, nothing extravagant, but Grace has never needed diamonds to shine. She reached for my hands with the kind of warmth that makes an old woman's heart loosen. I am so happy you came, Mrs. Butler. You being here means so much. You are his mother. And I can call you Mom. Her voice was gentle, almost musical, and for a brief second I felt the sting of tears because someone, at least someone, still remembered who I was to him. She noticed the box I carried and offered me a hopeful smile. You brought him a gift? He will love that. Truly. That one sentence. It made me stand a little straighter. She did not know how long I had waited to give it to him. She did not know what it meant. Before I could tell her, Yurik appeared between us like a sudden storm. His face flushed red, jaw clenched so tight I saw a vein jump at his temple. He did not even look at the box or at Elsa's hopeful eyes. He looked only at me, and what I saw inside his gaze could have stripped bark off a tree. My ceremony does not need a burden, he hissed, loud enough for nearby guests to turn. Know your place. Elsa froze. Her fingers, which had been lightly resting near my wrist, stiffened. She looked from him to me, bewildered, as if she had just seen a stranger wearing her fiancé's face. Yurik, she whispered, please do not talk to your mother like that. Today is our wedding. She just wants to be here with you. He spun toward her, fury snapping like a whip. You do not know anything, so shut your mouth. The entire hall went silent. I could hear the air conditioning hum. Hear someone drop a fork somewhere across the room. Hear my own heartbeat stutter like an old engine. Elsa's eyes watered. She took a small step back and covered her mouth, stunned by the sudden cruelty. I wished I could comfort her, but I barely existed in that moment, except as a target for my son's shame. I opened the velvet box with trembling hands. Yurik, I said softly. These were your stepfather's cufflinks. He wanted you to have them on your wedding day. He told me to keep them safe until this moment. They were not from his father, the man who left us when Yurik was 10, but from the man who stepped in afterward, the man who tried to love him like his own. My voice cracked, but I kept going. I thought you might like to wear them. He looked at the cufflinks as if they were insects. I do not need trash from you or from him, he said, louder than before. He snatched the box out of my hand, the motion so quick it startled several guests. Then, right in front of me, he hurled it onto the floor. The cufflinks rolled out, silver against the pale tile. Before I could even bend down to reach them, his shoe came down hard. Once, twice, grinding the metal into the dirt and dust the wind had blown inside earlier. A sharp sound escaped Elsa, half gasp, half sob. She reached for his arm instinctively. Yurik, stop! Those belonged to someone she loved. Your mother brought them with joy. Please, do not do this. He jerked his arm away. Stay out of it. His friends laughed loud, ugly laughter that fills a room like a foul odor. One of them muttered, "Look at her, crawling around for junk." The words hit harder than the fall I took a second later. As I knelt down to gather the crushed cufflinks, my knees buckled and my balance slipped. Yurik did not reach for me. He shoved me, hard enough that I hit the floor. My palm slid across the tile and a sting shot up my wrist. Gasps rippled through the guests, but no one moved, no one except Elsa, who tried to run toward me. Yurik grabbed her wrist. "Do not touch her," he snapped. "She is not part of this day. I do not want her in a single photo." For a moment, even breathing hurt. I saw Elsa's eyes wide, horrified, heartbroken, and I knew she was seeing the real him for the first time. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I took a slow breath and reached for the cufflinks again. The metal was bent, smeared with dirt, unrecognizable from the polished silver my husband once wore on our anniversary dinners. My fingers closed around them anyway. I held them to my chest as I pushed myself upright, ignoring the laughter, ignoring the pain in my hip. I said nothing to Yurik. There are moments in life when silence is the only shield left to an old woman. I lifted my chin, and though my body wobbled, I walked out of that hall with my dignity stitched tight around every breath. Behind me, the music began again, but it could not drown the truth, settling deep in my bones. This was no longer the boy I raised. This was someone else entirely. Someone I no longer recognized. Someone who no longer recognized me. And that, right there, was the first crack in the day that was supposed to bind a family together. It was also the moment I realized the story was far from over. I used to believe that time softened the hard edges of memory. But standing there in that wedding hall, with dirt still clinging to the cufflinks in my hand, I realized that some wounds grow sharper with age. People think a mother always knows why her child turns cold, but the truth is more painful. Sometimes you do not see the cracks until they have already become canyons. When Yurik was 10 years old, his father left us without a note, without a backward glance, without even pretending he cared about the boy he was abandoning. I remember the morning clearly. The coffee pot was still warm, his boots were gone, and the emptiness in our kitchen felt heavier than the whole state of Oklahoma. I tried my best to hold myself together, but a child sees everything. He saw the way my hands shook when I washed the dishes. He saw the way I tried to smile at him over dinner and failed. He saw the way I sometimes sat on the front steps at night, whispering to the wind because I had no one left to whisper to. And somewhere inside his young heart, something twisted. He decided I was the reason his father left. He decided his father ran away because I was weak. The truth was simpler. His father ran away because he was selfish. But selfishness is easier to forgive than weakness in the eyes of a wounded child, and so all of his pain turned toward me. I kept us afloat the only way I could. I took on cleaning jobs during the day, worked the night shift at the diner, and spent weekends caring for seniors who could no longer bathe or dress themselves. 3 jobs, 3 paychecks, one mother trying to build a life for a boy she loved more than her own breath. But children do not remember overworked hands or late-night prayers. They remember empty chairs. Yurik remembered that I missed his middle school graduation, even though I sprinted 8 blocks on aching legs when my shift ended early, only to arrive minutes after the ceremony. He did not see me standing in the doorway with sweat rolling down my spine. He only saw his empty row of seats and decided I did not care. When he turned 16, all his friends were getting shiny new trucks from their fathers. He asked for one too. I could barely afford groceries that month, but I still scraped together enough to buy him a used car, old but functional. The day I brought it home, he stared at it like it was an insult. "Everyone will laugh at me," he said. "You are poor because you are lazy." I swallowed that sentence the way a mother swallows poison quietly. I did not tell him I had skipped meals to save for that car. I did not tell him my hands ached from wringing mops in the winter cold. I just pressed the keys into his palm and told him to drive safely. He never thanked me. When he reached 17, I tried to protect him the only way I knew. I would not let him roam the streets past midnight. Not in our neighborhood where drugs traded hands behind dumpsters and police sirens never fully quieted. But rules that come from love can feel like cages to a prideful boy. He told his friends I was controlling, old-fashioned, embarrassing. Every curfew became another brick in the wall he built between us. Years later, when he wanted to open a business with 2 unreliable friends, He came to me with loan papers thick as a Bible and interest rates that would have drowned us. I told him no. Not because I doubted him, but because I had seen too many people lose everything chasing dreams built on sand. He did not hear love in my refusal. He heard sabotage. "You do not want me to become someone," he shouted. "You want me stuck with you forever." If only he knew how many nights I lay awake praying for him to become more than I ever was. But prayers whispered in the dark do not stand a chance against resentment spoken out loud. Over time, he learned how to present a version of himself to the world that was polished and admirable. When he met Elsa, he wrapped her in sweetness so convincing that even I believed, for a moment, he had softened. He told her I was distant, cold, even cruel. He told her I never supported him, never believed in him, never tried hard enough to be a mother. Elsa, sweet girl that she was, tried to mend the gap she thought existed between us. She baked me cookies once, and I found the plate smashed in our trash can days later, crumbs mixed with shards. He must have told her I was not interested. He told her a story in which he was the wounded hero, and I was the villain who held the sword. By the time her family met me, they had already heard about the mother who never showed up, the mother who never tried, the mother who kept her son trapped in a small life. I could see the polite distance in their eyes, the quiet judgment. They almost pitied him for having me. I let them believe it, because arguing would only push him further away. What I did not know then, but understand now, is that resentment is fertile soil for greed. The more he convinced himself I had failed him, the easier it became for him to step over me in pursuit of a richer life. His anger was never about the car, or the curfews, or the missed ceremony. His anger was about needing someone to blame for the emptiness his father left behind, and I was the closest, the softest target. Sometimes the child you raise becomes the storm that tears your house apart, and you do not see it coming until you are already standing in the wreckage. I suppose that is why his cruelty at the wedding cut so deep. It was not sudden. It was every unspoken resentment, returning all at once, no longer hidden behind smiles. And it was at that moment, with the crushed cufflinks still in my hands, that I understood. My son had been preparing to hurt me for years. I used to watch Elsa look at my son with a softness that reminded me of spring sunlight, warm and patient in a way that made me wonder how long such tenderness could survive beside a man like Yurik. To the world, he played the role of the perfect gentleman. He held doors open, remembered her favorite flowers, and spoke with the kind of charm that makes people lean in without realizing they are being pulled. That charm never extended to me. Whenever I entered the room, his expression tightened like a fist. His voice, so sweet with Elsa, would harden in an instant, as if my presence shifted something sour inside him. The contrast was so sharp that even Elsa began to notice. One afternoon she invited me to their apartment for tea, hoping we could all grow closer before the wedding. I arrived with a simple gift, a hand-stitched handkerchief embroidered with wildflowers, something I made slowly, carefully, during evenings, when my hands were steady enough to thread a needle. I handed it to Elsa, and her eyes lit up with genuine appreciation. She unfolded it gently, tracing the stitches as if they were something precious. Before she could even thank me, Yurik snatched it from her fingers. Without a word, he walked to the corner and threw it into the trash. "We are not keeping that," he muttered. Elsa stared at him in disbelief. "It is beautiful. She made it for us." He waved her off. "Our wedding will not be stained by things like that." His words hung in the air like smoke. I could see the confusion weaving into Elsa's expression. She whispered to him to apologize, but he brushed her off as he always did, with a cold flick of his hand. She tried again, only to be met with, "Just let it go." After that, the invitations from Elsa stopped coming. Every time she mentioned wanting to see me, Yurik stepped in with an excuse. "We are busy. The place is a mess." There is no reason to force awkward moments. It was never about awkwardness. It was fear. He feared she would see the cracks in his performance. He feared she would notice he became someone else the moment I stepped near, someone sharper, smaller, and infinitely more bitter, and he feared she would learn why. Whenever Elsa brought up the idea of spending time with me, he stiffened. If she insisted, he would grow angry. "You do not understand anything about my childhood," he snapped. When she gently asked why he never called me Mom, he replied in a voice colder than steel, "Because she does not deserve it." She shared that conversation with me later, after everything fell apart. She had been disturbed by the venom in his tone, a side of him she had never seen before I entered the picture. Yorick wanted desperately to prove himself worthy of her wealthy family, and he believed the only way to do that was to distance himself from the life he came from. From me. "Your family is rich," he told her often. "I need to make sure I deserve you. I need to be better than where I came from." The way he said, "where I came from," felt like a blade sliding between my ribs. Elsa never understood why he said it with such bitterness. She only saw that the shame he carried had nothing to do with her and everything to do with me. There was a Sunday lunch where the truth revealed itself more clearly. We sat together in a quiet restaurant, sunlight slanting across the tablecloth, when Elsa excused herself to the restroom. The moment she disappeared around the corner, Ulrich leaned toward me and hissed, "Do not say anything to embarrass me." His jaw clenched, his fingers tapping against the table in that impatient rhythm I knew too well. When Elsa returned, he transformed instantly, turning warm again, reaching for her hand and laughing as though the darkness inside him had never existed. But she noticed. I saw the question flicker behind her eyes. It was small then, just the faint ache of uncertainty, but it was growing. Slowly, the pieces began forming a shape she did not yet understand. Why did he become cold around me? Why did he shut down any mention of my name? Why did his affection evaporate the moment I entered the room? Elsa's heart was kind, but her instincts were sharp, and something inside her sensed that the man she loved was hiding a version of himself he did not want her to see. She told me once, not long before the wedding, "I feel like there is a part of him he only shows when you are near, and I do not know who that man is." I remember placing my hand on hers, unable to give her an answer. I had been asking myself the same question for years. All I knew was that the shift in him had deep roots tangled in old resentment and long-held blame, and though Elsa could feel the unease growing, she did not yet realize that she was standing on the edge of a truth that would soon unravel everything she thought she knew about the man she planned to marry. That night, I sat on my couch holding the bent cufflinks in my palm, listening to the silence of my empty house. I thought of my husband, of his hands fastening those very cufflinks before dinners we could barely afford, of the way he smiled when he told me to keep them safe for Yurick's wedding someday, and the pain hit a depth I had not known existed. It was the kind of pain that does not scream. It settles. It anchors itself. It becomes part of your breathing. I whispered into the quiet. I did everything I could, and for the first time in my life, I was no longer sure it had ever been enough. I had already walked out of the hall, but my legs would not carry me to the car. So I slipped into the small waiting room beside the corridor, hidden but still close enough to hear the ceremony begin. I sat alone in the small waiting room outside the hall, the kind of place where venue staff store extra chairs and forgotten decorations. My hip throbbed from the fall, and the crushed cufflinks felt heavier in my palm than they had any right to. I had meant to go home, I truly had, but my legs would not carry me to the car yet. Instead, I sank into a plastic chair and tried to steady my breathing. The device clipped under my collar, my Medicare-issued memory aid, buzzed faintly, reminding me it was still recording my day. It was meant to help me remember doctor's instructions and grocery lists. I never imagined it would capture something far darker. While I sat there, I heard footsteps and then voices drifting from the hallway, muffled but close. I recognized Yurick's laugh first, that low-practiced chuckle he used whenever he wanted to impress someone. Then another voice, one of his friends, though I could not place which. "Man, you really scored," the friend said. "Elsa's family is loaded. You hit the jackpot." Yurick answered without hesitation, without lowering his voice, without the slightest shame. "I know. I am about to marry into a fortune. And once her father dies and he is not young, everything goes through Elsa. And then me." He laughed again, Not the fake polite one. A real one. Cold and greedy. My heart dropped into my stomach. His friend asked, "What about your mom? Are you going to help her out now that you are living big?" Yurik snorted. "Help her? She can rot in that filthy little shack of hers. I do not owe her anything." My hands shook around the cufflinks, the bent metal rattling in my palm. But the worst came next, a sentence so sharp it felt carved straight across my chest. "Let the old woman rot. She has always weighed me down. This wedding is my way out." My device recorded all of it. Every venomous word. I had not meant to listen. I had meant to stand up, to announce my presence, or leave the building altogether, but my body went still. I sat there long after their voices faded, clutching the cufflinks to my heart like they were the only things holding me together. Inside the hall, the officiant cleared his throat, and the guests quieted as the ceremony began. I stayed where I was, hidden behind the cracked door, half listening to vows that now felt like lies. I knew I should leave, but something inside me, an old instinct, maybe pride, maybe sorrow, kept me rooted to that chair. 10 minutes later, I heard a chime from the hall. A digital notification, then a few confused murmurs. I stood, leaning on the doorframe. The slideshow laptop sat near the altar, connected to a large screen behind the couple. Suddenly, bright text flashed across the enormous display. "New audio detected." Several guests frowned, whispering. Elsa's younger sister stood closest to the laptop. She had seen me fall earlier. She had seen Yurik shove me. Her eyes flicked to him, then to Elsa, then to the screen. She hesitated for just a second before tapping the notification. The audio began instantly. Yurik's voice filled the hall, louder than any vow spoken that day. "I am about to marry into a fortune." Gasps rippled across the guests. Elsa's head whipped toward him, confusion twisting her features. Her father stiffened, his jaw tightening until the muscles jumped. The recording continued. "She can rot in that filthy little shack of hers." A woman in the front row covered her mouth. Someone else whispered, "Did he just say his mother?" Elsa reached toward the laptop, but it was too late. The device played the next line with brutal clarity. "I am marrying for money. That is it." The room erupted into stunned murmurs. Then came the worst piece of all. The knife I already felt buried inside me. "She has always made me ashamed. She is nothing but dead weight." Elsa staggered back, as if struck, her eyes filled with tears and disbelief. "Yurik," she whispered, her voice breaking. "What is this?" He lunged toward the laptop, shouting, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" But her sister held up an arm to block him. "Do not touch me," the girl snapped. "Everyone deserves to hear this." Yurik's recording kept playing. "I do not care about her. I never have." The room fell into a horrified silence. Elsa's father turned toward me. He must have noticed me standing near the doorway, and the shock on his face shifted slowly into something sharper, something protective. He looked back at Yurik, his voice low and cold. "That is your mother." Elsa began to cry openly now, clutching the bouquet so tightly the stems snapped. "Tell me it is not true," she pleaded. "Tell me this is not who you are." But Yurik said nothing. His silence confirmed everything. He reached for her, but she recoiled, shaking her head. "Do not touch me," she whispered. "Not after this." Yurik tried again to shut off the laptop, but the damage was already done. Guests stared at him with disgust. Someone muttered, "What kind of man says that?" Another added, "He married her for money." Elsa's mother covered her face with trembling hands. Elsa's father stepped forward, gripping his daughter's shoulder protectively. "This wedding is over," he declared, his voice steady, even as fury simmered beneath. I took one small step back from the doorway, not wanting to be seen but unable to look away. In that single moment, the truth had shattered the world Yurik built for himself, and all I could do was watch it fall. The hall went silent after Elsa's father announced the wedding was over, but it was the kind of silence that buzzes with shock, anger, and the numb disbelief that settles in when something sacred collapses in front of your eyes. I stayed near the doorway, half in shadow, not because I wanted to hide, but because I did not know where I belonged in that room anymore. Everything happening felt too big, too loud, too sudden, yet painfully inevitable. Elsa stood trembling, her bouquet crushed in her hands, petals falling to the floor like tiny soft casualties of the truth. Her father stepped in front of her, shielding her from Yurik the way a man shields his child from a threat he cannot yet fully name. He looked Yurik straight in the eyes, no fear, no hesitation, only disappointment sharpened into conviction. "A man who treats his own mother like that," he said, his voice echoing through the hall, "cannot protect my daughter. He is not worthy to stand beside her." His words were final, the kind of verdict good fathers are unafraid to deliver. Elsa's mother moved to her daughter's other side, touching her arm with trembling fingers. "I will not let you live with someone capable of such cruelty," she whispered. Her voice broke on the word cruelty, as though saying it aloud made the truth too real. "I cannot let you bind your life to a man who shows no heart." Yurik's face flushed deep red, but for the first time it was not anger, it was fear. Pure, raw fear. He looked at Elsa with desperation crawling across his features, reaching for her as though she was his last lifeline. "Elsa, wait. Listen to me. This is blown out of proportion. You know I love you." His voice trembled in a way I had not heard since he was little, when he came home crying because other boys had thrown his backpack in the mud. But Elsa stepped back, her whole body quivering. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, streaking her makeup, and then she looked at him with a heartbreak so sharp it seemed to cut through every lie he had ever told her. "Did you marry me for money?" she asked. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Tell me the truth. Right now." Yurik froze. His throat moved as he swallowed. His gaze flickered briefly toward her father, then toward the guests staring, then toward me still standing by the doorway. He opened his mouth, but no words came. His silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Elsa exhaled shakily. "That is my answer," she whispered. And in that whisper, something inside her broke for good. Everything after that felt like dominoes falling. The officiant stepped back, unsure whether to leave or stay. Guests whispered to each other in urgent, horrified tones. Some pulled out their phones, ending the live streams in panic or continuing them in fascination. Others simply stared as if witnessing a car crash they could not turn away from. In an age where every moment becomes public in seconds, Yurik's downfall had already begun spreading far beyond those walls. Elsa's father turned to the wedding coordinator. "Shut it down," he said. "End everything." The coordinator nodded stiffly, signaling the staff to stop the music and begin dismantling the ceremony setup. What should have been applause and vows became clattering chairs and hurried footsteps. Yurik tried to move toward Elsa again, but her brother stepped in front of him this time. "Do not take another step," he warned, his voice cold. "You had your chance." Yurik looked around helplessly, as if searching for a single friendly face, but even his closest friends avoided his gaze. The ones who had laughed earlier now backed away, ashamed to be associated with him. It struck me then that cruelty is loud, but loyalty is quiet and often absent. The live stream, which had captured everything from the cufflinks to the recording, was already circulating online. I overheard a guest say, "People are furious. The comments are exploding." Someone else murmured that local news outlets were already asking questions. In a small town like ours, reputation spreads faster than wind. Then came the next blow. One of Elsa's uncles, a man with a stiff posture and a lawyer's gaze, approached the center of the room. "We will be pursuing charges," he announced. "Elder abuse is a crime in this state." His eyes settled on Yurik. "What you did was witnessed by hundreds of people and recorded. Consider yourself notified." Yurik's knees wavered. He shook his head, whispering, "No, no," as though denial could reverse the past 30 minutes of his life. But the world had already shifted beneath his feet. I saw one of his friends step further away, muttering, "Man, I am not getting dragged into this." before slipping out the door. Another followed, then another. His inner circle dissolved like sugar in water. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt relieved. But all I felt was an ache, deep and tired. The kind of ache only a mother knows when she recognizes that the child she raised has become a stranger. A stranger who built his life on resentment, lies, and greed, and watched it collapse in front of the very person he claimed to love. When Elsa finally walked toward the door flanked by her parents, she looked back only once. Not at me, not at the guests, but at the altar where her future had just unraveled. She whispered something I could not hear, then let her mother pull her away. Yurik remained standing alone at the center of the hall, the spotlight no longer flattering but unforgiving, revealing every crack in him. In that moment, he did not look like a groom. He looked like a boy who had lost everything and did not yet understand it was all his own doing. And that was how my son's wedding ended, not with a kiss, but with truth echoing louder than any vow ever could. When the hall emptied and the last of the whispers faded, I thought the world would turn its back on me the way my son had. I was wrong. In the days that followed, I learned that humiliation spreads fast, but justice quiet. Justice spreads even faster when people see something that should never have happened. By the next morning, the video of Yurik shoving me, the audio of him mocking me, and the collapse of the ceremony had reached every corner of Oklahoma. I did not know this at first. I woke up with a sore hip, puffy eyes, and a heart that felt both too heavy and strangely hollow. I thought the world would simply move on without me. But by noon, my phone rang non-stop. A neighbor from 2 streets knocked on my door with soup. A woman from church left a bouquet on my porch with a note that said, "No mother deserves this." Then came messages from people I had never met, strangers who lived hours away. They had seen the video, read the captions, and felt something stir inside them: anger, compassion, or maybe the quiet understanding that aging should not mean becoming invisible. Later that afternoon, I received a call from a representative of the State Council for Aging and Elder Protection. Her voice was warm and steady. She told me that my story had reached their offices because of how many people shared it, and she asked if I would be willing to speak at one of their community events. "Your experience could help others," she said. "People listen when pain turns into wisdom." I sat there holding the phone, stunned into silence. No one had ever asked me to speak before. I had spent most of my life listening, nodding, working, surviving. The idea that someone wanted to hear my voice felt almost unreal. But the kindness did not stop there. A former student, someone I barely remembered from my days working the elementary school cafeteria, created a GoFundMe page titled, "Help Mrs. Butler Stand Tall Again." I did not know until I opened my front door and found envelopes, groceries, and even a handmade quilt left on my steps. The page had raised thousands of dollars in a single day. People left comments like, "For every mother who has been mistreated, and she deserves better." I cried harder reading those words than I had cried at the wedding. Still, the moment that undid me came 3 days later when I heard a soft knock at my door. When I opened it, Elsa stood there, her eyes red-rimmed, her hands trembling as she clutched a small tin of cookies. She did not speak at first. She simply stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me with a desperation I had not expected. "You did not deserve any of that," she whispered into my shoulder. "Not 1 second of it." Her voice cracked. "I am so sorry. I did not know. I did not see him clearly." We stood like that for a long moment. 2 women connected not by marriage, but by grief, betrayal, and the need for truth. When she finally pulled back, she wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "I wanted to come sooner," she said, "but my parents wanted me to rest. I could not stop thinking about you." She stepped inside quietly, almost hesitantly, as if afraid she might break whatever fragile quiet lived in my house. We sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I once helped Yurik with homework, the same table where I had folded tiny socks and wiped birthday cake off plates. Now, it held a tin of cookies and 2 mugs of tea. Elsa held one of the bent cufflinks delicately between her fingers. "These meant something to you," she said softly. "I am sorry he destroyed them." I looked at the cufflink, then at her. "He destroyed a lot of things," I replied. "But some things can still be repaired, even if they will never look the same." Tears welled again in her eyes. "I thought he loved me," she whispered. "I thought he loved you too, somewhere deep down." I kept thinking I just had not seen the full picture. She took a shaky breath. But the full picture, it was worse than the pieces. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. "Love can blind people, especially young hearts. You saw what he wanted you to see. That is not your fault." She swallowed hard. "Thank you for forgiving me." I shook my head gently. "There is nothing to forgive." Over the next hour, she talked about the guilt she carried, the nightmares she had since the wedding, and the fear that maybe she had ignored signs she should have noticed. I told her what I had told myself in the lonely hours of my life, that people reveal themselves when the world stops watching, and what she saw at the wedding was the truth he had been hiding from both of us. Before she left, she stood in my doorway with her hands tucked into her sleeves like a child trying to keep warm. "Can I come back?" she asked quietly. "Not because of him. Because I care about you." My heart softened in a way I had not felt since before my husband died. "Of course you can," I said. "You always will be welcome here." After she drove away, I sat on my porch as the sun dipped over the Oklahoma horizon, turning the sky shades of gold and ember. For the first time in days, the ache in my chest loosened. The world had seen my pain, but it had also seen my dignity. And in return, the world unexpectedly, overwhelmingly, had given something back. Compassion, protection, and a sense of belonging I had not felt in years. Justice had not arrived with shouting or vengeance. It had come quietly, through people who believed dignity still mattered. And it had come through Elsa, a young woman who had lost everything she thought she had, only to find something gentler waiting at my kitchen table. In the quiet days, after the chaos settled, I found myself moving through my house with a slowness that felt intentional, as though each step required me to relearn what it meant to live without carrying shame that did not belong to me. The community support, the kindness, the letters, all of it helped, but healing has never been a loud process. It is not dramatic, it is not swift. It is the soft work of choosing yourself, day after day, even when your heart still aches in the places someone else bruised. One afternoon, when the Oklahoma sun was warm enough to soften the edges of everything it touched, I sat at my dining table, with the crushed cufflinks laid out before me. Their metal was bent, the engraving nearly gone, and dirt still clung to the crevices, like old memories refusing to fade. I brought out a small cloth and a bottle of silver polish I had saved for special things, anniversaries, holidays, days when I wanted to feel closer to the man who once held me with quiet steadiness. I worked slowly, rubbing the cloth in small circles the way I used to polish my husband's boots before his night shifts. Each pass of the cloth revealed a faint shimmer beneath the damage. Not perfect, not new, but surviving. When the cufflinks finally held a soft shine again, I carried them to the mantel and placed them beside my husband's photograph. His smile in that picture was the smile he wore on the night he proposed, sure, gentle, full of promise. My voice came out as a whisper, fragile but steady. "I tried to give them to him," I said to the photo. "But he is not the boy you remember. He is not the boy you told me to protect." My fingers brushed the cufflinks lightly. I kept my promise as long as I could. The house felt impossibly still for a moment. Then a breeze swept through the open window, moving the curtains just enough to make the sunlight dance on the metal. It felt like an answer not from the past, but from the part of myself that had been quiet too long. That evening, as twilight settled over my small front yard, I heard footsteps outside the gate. Slow, dragging footsteps that carried the weight of someone who had run out of places to go. I stepped onto the porch, and there he was. Yurik, shrunken, exhausted, his suit wrinkled, his hair a mess, his eyes swollen. For a heartbeat, I saw the little boy he once was, the one who used to run into my arms after school. But then he looked up, and the man he became came rushing back. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "Please, please let me in." His hand pressed weakly against the gate, fingers trembling. "I have nowhere else to go. I did not mean for everything to go this way. I just need to come home." Home, the word stung. Home had once been where I waited for him with warm meals and hopeful eyes. Home had once been where I believed love could fix anything. But homes can only survive so many storms before the structure changes forever. I stepped closer to the gate, but did not open it. Through the narrow space between the boards, our eyes met. There was no anger in me anymore. Anger burns hot and fast. What I felt now was cold, still, and old as grief. "You called me a burden," I said softly, the words leaving my lips like a truth I finally allowed myself to speak. "You told me to know my place. So now, you will live by your own words." He shook his head, tears gathering. "Please, Mom. I was wrong. I am sorry." His voice broke into a desperate whisper. "I am begging you." For a long moment, I simply stood there, looking at the child I raised and the man I no longer recognized. Then I let out a slow breath. "You made your choice," I said gently. "And now, I am making mine." I closed the gate. Not slammed, not shoved, just closed firm enough that the latch clicked, soft enough that the finality did not feel cruel. On the other side, Yurik let out a sound somewhere between a sob and a plea, but I did not open the gate again. I turned back toward my house, the porch light casting a soft pool of gold across the floorboards. Inside, the smell of warm chamomile drifted from the kitchen. Elsa stood by the stove, stirring 2 mugs of tea. She looked up, concerned about touching her features. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. I nodded. "I will be." She handed me a mug and smiled a small, tender smile that carried none of the expectations or demands that had weighed on me for years. She was not my daughter-in-law, not anymore, but she was something better, a kind presence, a steady heart, a safe place to land. I sat down at the table across from her, the same table where so much of my life had unfolded, and for the first time in a long while, the room felt warm again. Outside, the night deepened. The gate stayed closed. And I realized that choosing peace is not the same thing as loneliness. Sometimes choosing peace simply means choosing the people who show up with open hands, not clenched fists. Elsa poured more tea, humming softly as she moved, and I felt something gentle settle inside me, a quiet certainty that I had finally closed the door on a past that no longer deserved to follow me. I chose kindness. I chose dignity. I chose myself. And this time, I was not choosing alone. And that, my dear listeners, is how an old woman finally closed the door on a past that had weighed on her shoulders for far too long. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with truth, dignity, and the quiet courage to walk forward without looking back. Life has a way of testing us, especially in our later years. But it also has a way of sending unexpected kindness when we think we have run out of light. Elsa's footsteps in my kitchen, the warmth of tea shared between 2 broken hearts, learning to mend those are the blessings I carry now. Not the cruelty, not the humiliation, not the boy who forgot who raised him. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength or the strength of someone you love, I would be grateful if you stayed a while longer with me. Tap that subscribe button to join our porch, our little corner of the world here at Grand MA True Stories. Your support helps keep these memories alive, helps carry these lessons forward, and reminds every quiet soul out there that they are not alone. Thank you for listening, sweetheart. I will come back soon. I have more stories to tell.